Fellow St. Lucians, we wish to advise that this is a new program known as Open Mic, and today is the first day this program will be aired. This program was born over the fact that we as St. Lucians would like to highlight to the public the importance of business on the island. And I want to introduce my guests. This is Mohammed, well-known business person, and Dr. Chris Bott, who is a consultant in international affairs and is well-known in the international community. At some point, Dr. Bott will give a description, a very short description of himself, so the St. Lucian public can understand exactly what is taking place. We shall waste no further time, and we shall proceed immediately with the show. This show is to highlight to St. Lucians the importance of business on the island. As we feel in the past, business people are viewed differently than what they really represent. On that score, I wish now to pose my first question to Mrs. Mohammad. Mrs. Mohammad, in the last few years, between yourself and your investors, you actually built a beautiful shopping center, if I'm not mistaken, to the tune of some $130 million, and which is really a masterpiece for St. Lucia. Unfortunately, the project came to fruition amidst a world recession, and there have been difficult times. But you have proved that with your expertise that you have been able to maintain the high caliber of Baywalk Mall and also put Rodney Bay on the map. We also would like to lay great emphasis on the wonderful structure directly opposite, which is the JQ Mall, which started some years before you. And as a result of the standards created by yourself, both shopping centers, I would say, are a big plus for St. Lucia, and many people from the small islands actually praise what you all have done. So on that score, I wish to thank you, and I ask you to take the first question from me by responding to the importance of business on the island, the importance of business to a nation.
I would think that business, as I wrote here a short while ago, business influence should refine the direction of a country economically. I feel that commerce is the engine behind the economy. By this I mean through taxation on industries, distribution of welfare through employment, the settling down of the talent between the business and a government, working in tandem to bring to the island a success that can be measured not just by one group of people, by an entire nation.
Thank you. I would like to touch a little more and elaborate on what you have just said. Like yourself, some 22 years ago, I embarked upon the first shopping center in St. Lucia, which is Gatewood Shopping Mall, and we actually left the space for a small supermarket, approximately 10,000 square feet, and in my view, Gatewood Mall was undoubtedly very successful. And what I noticed at Gatewood Mall, when the project was completed, it was well timed, the economy was quite good at the time, and the 4 acres of land upon which this mall was constructed was nothing more than a swamp which produced nothing. And today, between the supermarket and the 41 outlets of the mall, some 375 people are employed. And when one looks at the little businesses that were started, the small entrepreneurs which came forward, and the success of a supermarket which brought the supermarket industry to another level, it was actually phenomenal. We were able to assist government by having there the banking institution, the post offices, and many other outlets which took pressure off the Castries Basin. The Castries Basin, as we all know, has suffered tremendously because of bad parking and a number of issues which I'm not prepared to elaborate upon at this time. So I'm saying that as a result of an individual coming on board with some vision for the island, this has created the shopping center. As a result of the success of Gaberwood Shopping Mall, at least 4 other shopping centers were embarked upon, and I don't have to tell St. Lucians what those shopping centers have done. It raised the standard of shopping and it provided employment. And if you take today the JQ Mall at Rodney Bay, the Baywalk Mall, the Rodney Heights Mall, the Viewfort complex, the Mega J's, you will find that after many years, pretty close to 4,000 people are employed. And what happens, in my view, is that these employees in turn pay their taxes and they use a lot of facilities and actually produce a disposable income which you can't put a price on. And from that aspect, I see that's a good start for the private sector, and anyone wishing to emulate these projects will undoubtedly help the government tremendously, because I have consistently maintained a government supposed to provide the environment for business and allow business people to move forward. On that score, I now ask Dr. Bart, who is not a St. Lucian, but who has provided invaluable assistance to the island for the last couple of years by way of his field, his expertise as a consultant. Dr. Bart, I now call upon you to say a few words in light of what you've just heard.
Thank you very much for inviting me to be one of your first guests on your first show. It's really an honor and a privilege to be here, so thank you for that. I think if the question is what is the role of business in the success of an economy, it's extraordinarily important. For a government to think that it can simply borrow money and use that to fund programs for which there is no tax base upon which to pay that money back is essentially giving a death sentence to the country. Because without a reliable source of tax revenues that comes from productive and successful businesses, for the government to operate, it has to borrow, and it's just digging its own grave, for which they are robbing future generations of their prosperity, assuming that the government is intending at some point to pay that money back. But it would certainly also debase the currency and make it much more difficult and expensive for the average citizen in the economy to enjoy a standard of living which comes from having access to goods and services from around the world. So the government has a valuable role to play, and it needs to create an environment in which it allows for the successful operation and creation of existing business, but also new businesses. I think that through taxation policy, one of the obvious ways that governments have missed, particularly in North America, the opportunity to encourage and foster new businesses is by offering a tax-free holiday on capital gains on the starting of new businesses, because to start a new venture is extraordinarily risky, and individuals that start those up while paying taxes on the revenue, the value of their shares, the value of their investment when it's ultimately sold, should have a tax-free component to it, because they took the risk. They took the risk to do that. And that's a huge incentive for individuals to start new businesses. But the government also has to deal with one of the most fundamental questions. The heart of any economy is small business. It's the individual entrepreneurs who start little shops and ultimately help them to grow. Any person who rents a shop in your business would represent one of those individuals. But they have to know what they're doing. And I have to tell you quite honestly, I've talked with more than one small business owner after they've gone bankrupt, only to realize, for them to realize, they didn't know what they were doing. They didn't understand the basic fundamentals of how to start and successfully operate and manage a business. And I think that this is where the government itself has a powerful role through the education system to say, to what extent are we offering programs that allow entrepreneurs to successfully start and launch a business? I mean, so many entrepreneurs, they start off as employees, they've saved their money, they invested in a business because they have a dream. But sadly, it's the wrong dream. They haven't thought through whether there's a real business opportunity waiting for them to take advantage of. They haven't thought about the competition. They haven't thought about the need to provide customer service and quality and accessibility. They haven't thought about how to properly manage and supervise and motivate a staff, whether it's one or whether it's 10. Those are many things that a small entrepreneur has to juggle simultaneously to be successful. It's not rocket science, and it's not complicated, but you have to have some sense of knowing what to do. And it's sad when you see an education system which is just inadvisedly devoted to turning out more philosophers and English literature majors and psychologists and even lawyers, when that's not what the society needs. The society needs people who are able to produce goods and services, who are able to perform services. And so in that sense, we need entrepreneurs to start business, but we also need people to actually service the industries that allow businesses to grow. You can't run a business that involves machinery if you don't have somebody to fix the machinery. You can't open a car dealership if you don't have mechanics to know how to repair the cars. And so the education system should be geared to, and I don't want to take anything away from society needs philosophers and artists and musicians and yes, English literature graduates, but not to the exclusion of the things that produce prosperity, not just for the individual, but for society as a whole. And that's where, through the taxation system and the education system, that many governments get it wrong and do themselves a lot of harm.
You know, Dr. Bart, it's so interesting listening to what you've said, because I've advocated for years that what St. Lucia needs is a strong vocational center. In France, for instance, you have what you call the military service. It doesn't mean going to war. When an individual, a man reaches 20 years of age, by law, he is bound to serve 2 years in the military service. And during that 2 years, you have professionals who understand very clearly what these people are capable of. Our tourism industry is a very formidable industry, and regardless of what people may say, it's a very resilient industry. It's resilient for the simple fact that just like a car that needs to be serviced, the human body needs to be serviced once a year. That service comes in the form of a holiday, okay? Now, when one builds a hotel, I have repeatedly indicated that hotels are not great money producers, but they are good for the island because they can be termed as an employment agency. When a hotel is built, you need accountants. First of all, you need a contractor to put up the hotel. You need an architect to design it. You need artisans to build it. Artisans comprise of plumbers, masons, joiners, electricians, and the like. Even when a hotel is completed, it doesn't end there, because you need accountants, you need computer engineers, you need computer experts, you need people to run the bars, you need the area for the people to take care of the rooms to maintain the standards. And today, what we have to understand is that many hoteliers may consider that the hotel next door is a competitor. That's not so. The competitor is the one in Mexico and also the Dominican Republic, who are producing food and services less expensive than we can. And if the powers that be don't quickly understand the direction we are going, our hotel industries will languor in despair. And this cannot continue. And when I look at St. Lucia today, if I'm not mistaken, there could be anywhere between 300 to 500 lawyers. Most of them are not earning a proper living. And these are basically intelligent people. There is nothing infidel about being a carpenter or an electrician or a mason. I mean, it is done all over. Today, I can speak for myself. If I want a good electrician, I have to actually be on the waiting list. So, on an island today, which by statistical figures indicate that there's 25% of unemployment, this is frightening and not necessary, okay? Because a good electrician who knows his way around will probably end up employing 4 to 5 people. And I think governments throughout the region need to recognize the importance of the kind of people you need in an establishment. You take my business, for example. I cannot go and employ lawyers because they're available. I need accountants, I need carpenters. So these are the people that have and cause a business to run. So your point is well taken.
But don't you think that for years, I mean, I've been here 25 years and I've been hearing the general public, the business sector, speaking of this, but it hasn't taken root where it should be taken yet, and that is at the school level. That's as you leave the age 12 into that age 12, 16 bracket, that's where that should be indoctrinated into the young minds of our young leaders or young professionals coming forward. If you go to any school system still on the island, the thrust is into the business sector. There is never any thrust into vocational studies. You have a child who's coming last in test and you ask him, what does he want to do? He wants to be a lawyer or a doctor. But he doesn't know anything about carpentry, masonry. He has no idea of the emphasis on the money and where it can take him. The powers that be must put in place the programs directed to educate us, our children, as a carpenter isn't a demeaning profession. It is a profession that could make you more money than the lawyer. It could make you much more of a man or a woman than the lawyer. We are not ready for that here. In many of the smaller islands, we're still moving towards a first world North American thinking, and that's what we think they are thinking, but it's not necessarily so.
Well, I want to jump in on that as well too, because I want to jump in on that as well too, because
we just have to take a 2-minute break, and we'll be right back.
Right.